Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Chill Like a Mother podcast. I'm Kayla Huszar, the host, and I'm trying on the title of Mom Guilt Therapist. And I'm here with Emily from the Sparkle Project. I was on her podcast a couple weeks ago, and we wanted to get together again to discuss the elephant in the room, which is mom guilt. We all know the elephant is there. We even acknowledge it. We can even feel it stepping on our chest every once in a while. And so, Emily, let's start off with the way you would like describe guilt to someone, especially like the flavor of mom guilt that can be
Yeah.
different from other kinds of guilt.
Yeah. Well, I always like to start off by saying that the way that I define mom guilt personally, and that I've heard it defined in like the academics around motherhood, is really more of a like combination of guilt and shame. It's not just the feeling of guilt of like I did something wrong, but there's like this added layer to it of making that mean something about ourselves as moms. And I think that's really important because just the word guilt alone means something, but mom guilt does kind of tend to go a step further into shame and like, I'm not doing enough or I'm a bad mom. Mom guilt, what's really interesting about it is that oftentimes when we experience mom guilt, it's tied to societal standards and we're holding ourselves to these expectations that may or may not be something we actually like believe to be true about ourselves or about like what is a good mom? What does it mean to be a good mom? A lot of times we're not even aware of like what our own beliefs are, but we're holding ourselves to those societal standards and feeling absolutely awful about ourselves because we're not living up to them.
The first time I had like made this distinction was when a therapist who I was working with at the time, she named it actually like toxic guilt. And I was like, what is the difference between just like guilt and toxic guilt? And she was like, what you're describing is not like guilt because
Yeah.
like the definition of guilt is like legitimately done something like wrong or like not in alignment with your values or like you did cross a line or you did come in too heavy, too hot, too whatever, and you feel bad about that.
Yeah.
And it's like actually something that you want to change or shape or shift. And she was like, the thing that you're talking about is like you've done nothing wrong and you feel bad about it. Like you haven't actually fucked up your kids in this like actual like emotional, physical, uh, neglect or like abuse way. She's like, yeah, you lost your shit, but like you're here talking to me about it and you're continuing to beat yourself up about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think just like the idea of guilt as like a normal human emotion, and we can think about like if somebody is on trial for like a murder and they don't show guilt, like that's a problem. Guilt is totally normal to feel.
Yes.
It's when we take it to that toxic level, which is honestly hard not to do because of all the messaging and just like the conditioning we have to like, again, hold ourselves to those standards that
Yeah.
aren't realistic and they're not, again, they're usually not tied to our actual values.
Yes. Or like our actual selves.
Yeah.
Right? Like there are moments when I feel like a bad mom or like I've damaged my kids and I'm not a perfect parent. And so there are moments that I've had to repair. There are moments that they've experienced things with me or any of the other adults in their life that like weren't this like totally cool, calm and collected moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Not
And
so chill.
not so chill, not so chill. But that doesn't like inherently mean like damage beyond repair. I think I maybe have a different view on this. And I've shared this a bit before on other episodes around like I was raised by a single parent and I'm an only child. And so my mom's flavor of guilt would be very different than even how I view guilt because I am living a very different life. Like she would feel guilty because she had two jobs and and
Yeah.
like had to like make ends meet where like I feel guilty because I work late sometimes. You know? So it's like if we bring it back to like the definition, like that
Yeah.
actually made her a good like
Like she
that
was
actually
showing
made
up
her
for
a good
you.
she was showing up. She was like doing everything that she could to provide like swimming lessons and girl guides,
Yeah.
where like this level that I feel is like on a totally different playing field. And yet it's the same emotion.
Yeah. It comes out in your body the same way. It also makes me ask the question, like, what does it mean to be human and to be a
Mhm.
mom who is human? Because, yeah, like you can have that moment where you are yelling at your kid and that might not be something that you want to do. you want to work on the regulation or whatever behind that. But I think a lot of times the guilt is actually like perfectionism, expecting that standard of perfection, expecting that like we're not supposed to mess up our kids in any way. Where like if we even think about that, it's like it's life. Like they're
Yeah.
living life. Obviously, I say that to an extent, right? Like we
Yeah,
don't
no,
want
of
to
course.
cause major trauma for our children, but like to expect that we're just going to like be these perfect role models in their life. There's probably other implications that would happen in the future if we do show up completely perfectly for them anyway,
Yes.
right? So it's like the nuance of, yeah, our circumstances. And if you are a single mom, what you're experiencing versus if you are a working mom or a stay-at-home
Mhm.
mom or like whatever different thing, there's so much there. But there's also like the nuance of, yeah, you cannot be happy something happened the way it is. You can want to change it, all those things, and also not take it and make it mean something so deeply harmful about yourself,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah. It's like guilt says I did a bad thing that like I might not want to do again or that I might like need to seek out support for. Where like toxic guilt and or shame is like I am bad. Like I am bad because or
Yeah.
like I am damaging them or I am not enough or I am nothing I do will ever be enough. Where like guilt's like is the pause of like what did I actually do that was
Yeah.
wrong? Like on a moral level. Like I've had so many clients say to me like, "Kayla, it feels like it's never enough." And then I often pause and I'll say, "But can you really do more?"
Yeah.
Let's really take stock of this because if you can and you feel there's like self-sabotage or self-abandonment or something in that, of course, like let's unpack that a little bit. But in general, can you do more? Can you ask more of yourself? Like, and if you can, okay, let's explore that. But if you can't, like that's not a moral issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also, when you say that, it's like, and what is enough? Would more
Mhm.
be enough? And I think oftentimes that's kind of the problem is no. Like
Yeah.
if we're holding ourselves to levels of perfection, like it doesn't really matter how much you work on yourself, how much you fix the little things that you have guilt about, all of that. It's like if you're holding yourself to a level of perfection, you will fall short of that because you just will. And it's never going to be enough.
Yeah. And I had a friend message me this morning and she said, I don't know how I feel about feeling good enough. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, tell me more about that. Because it's like out in the world of like good, like
Yeah.
just be good enough. Right. And like, what does that mean? And she was like, it just feels like I would be settling in some way
Mm,
that like, is good enough that am I okay with like losing my mind on my kids? Or am I okay with like this level of I don't have my shit together? What does that even mean? And it was such an interesting conversation because I have also had a couple of clients be like, Kayla, I don't know what is good enough. Like, what does that
yeah.
even mean? And like, would it mean that I'm settling? Like, would it mean that I'm like, for some people, they might be able to convince themselves that like, okay, well, it is good enough, whatever this is.
Yeah.
Right. And I've had these conversations with people like there is only so many days that you can leave the dishes. There is only so many days that you can kind of like check out from parenting or avoiding an emotion or avoiding a conversation. There is only so much that we can say, you know what, this is protective. And I just need to kind of like shut this part off for a minute, or I just need to like adjust and we can have cereal tonight and I can give myself grace for that. But what people are bringing to me lately is like, at what point do I actually need a bit more like grit? And I think that's different from shame. And that's why it's so
Yeah.
complicated. Like, that's why it's so nuanced and complicated because what if for some people cereal was okay 3 nights a week?
Yeah.
What if for some people 4 hours of screen time on Saturday and Sunday was okay? And whatever those like definitions or those like markers
Mhm.
are so different for so many people.
Yeah. I mean, I think like I have two kind of competing thoughts right now. The one I think is you can continue working on something while not choosing, and choosing's kind of a loose word there, but not choosing to feel that toxic guilt, right? Like
Mm.
you can know that like this is not it. This is not how I want our days to be. Like I want to be working on myself and whatever it is that needs to be worked on, right? But it's like the element of this is good enough in the fact that I am choosing to work on the thing. And
Mm.
obviously, like in different seasons, that may look different. But something that actually come up like multiple times in the last week for me, I went through a separation in the summer of 2024 and have, the rest of that year was kind of figuring out living separate. By the end of that year, so start of 2025, we were living separately, had the kids 50-50. And at the time, I didn't quite realize it, but really I knew I needed to prioritize myself. I knew that like I had to be the priority. The kids had a lot of support from both of our families, from both of us, and I became the priority. Again, not really consciously, but it was like, I got to work on me. And in that time, there was like way too much screen time. Like, I need to now work on how we're going to like shift things back to a different routine and how I'm going to get the kids on board with that. And I have ADHD. I'm not the best at like creating new routines and like figuring that out. So it's a whole challenge, right? But I realized somewhere along the way that what was important to me was that my kids knew that I was their person. Like they could come to me for whatever. That relationship was the most important thing in that, right? And it has been. There's been like my kids know that they are loved. They know that they're supported. They know that they have a safe home. Like the things that if I really think about what is the point of all of this, all of that, like we've checked the boxes. Are there
Yeah.
things that like if I let myself, go down some toxic guilt spiral that I'm like, oh my God, or like things that I wouldn't want somebody else to know, like absolutely. There absolutely are. But I can also recognize that honestly, like, I think it was good enough because I was working on me. And thank God I was working on me. Like,
Yes.
I'm okay. I'm doing well. I'm thriving. They have a mom who is showing up and like loves herself and has a community of support and is emotionally fulfilled. Like, all these things that are arguably more important than them not having an ungodly amount of screen time on the weekends, right? Like,
Yeah.
I will stand 10 toes down on that. Like that is more important. And I'm proud of myself for the choices I made. But there's a lot of room for guilt in that. There was a lot of room for shame in that. And yeah, I think just when we think about good enough, it's like it doesn't have to mean that you're stopping there, but it
Mhm.
can be acknowledging the season. It can be acknowledging that like the feelings of like, I'm horrible because of this don't actually help in making change. Like it just doesn't.
Yes, yes. And a friend of mine and a therapist, we recorded an episode a couple of episodes ago, and we were talking about the idea of, I'm going to run this by you, and I want your opinion on it because I think it's
Yeah.
exactly what you're trying to name. We were talking about the idea of like out in the world, the rhetoric is that like kids come first. And also the same message is that you need to put on your own oxygen mask before you can take care of anybody else. And so what does that actually mean? We're talking like chicken or egg here, right? Is like, do the kids come first or does the mom come first? Like if the kids are first, like if that's your goal, right? They feel loved, they feel cared for, you're breaking cycles, you're doing all the things that like you set out to do when you were a parent, then you kind of have to be ground zero. And so if ground zero means taking time for myself, letting them watch a couple extra episodes of TV, putting on the TV so that you can sleep in on the weekends. I set out bowls of cereal and they either choose to add milk or not. But like I need a day, one day where I'm not like woken up like
Yeah.
like that or have to wake up at 6, right? And so there's this if the kids come first, which is what most moms want. So then if you're ground zero as the primary parent, what does that look like?
Yeah. I mean, the way I think of it, I think we're kind of talking about two different things when we're talking about the kids coming first and the mom coming first. It's like to prioritize yourself doesn't mean you're not meeting your kids' needs. Like you
Mm,
can decide, like, obviously, I'm not going to let my kid be in a bad situation or an unsafe situation because I wanted to do something. Like, it's like almost like what circumstances are we even talking about? That's not really what we're up against. But I do believe that in a lot of ways, mom has to come first. Like,
mhm.
we have to be good if we want to show up for our kids. And again, like that showing up can look like a lot of different things in a lot of
Yes.
different seasons. To me, I think that relationship we have with our kids is key.
Yes.
And then making sure that we're supporting them in all the areas and all of that. I was an elementary school teacher until my oldest was like 4. So by the time he entered school, I was no longer a teacher. But I knew that going into school, I was going to try my best to be kind of a more hands-off parent, which might sound interesting, strange, but like that was just kind of my idea coming from the classroom. I'm not going to try and insert myself too
Yes.
much in a lot of this. And he had a kind of rough start in school. And of course, we supported him and, all of that. But he's like in second grade and for the most part thriving. It's knowing that like, yes, I could have taken a very different approach there and like really prioritized my kid in ways that I think sometimes we think we're supposed to. And, you're
Mhm.
showing up and being very involved in what are they learning right now and all these things. And I didn't. And I don't know that the result would have been any different in the end. So there's these ideas of things we need to prioritize for our kids for them to be, I don't know what's the goal, like for them to be perfect humans at the end of it all. Like that's not the goal, right? Like we're not holding
Mhm.
them to those standards. The time that I can take for myself and not just the time, but like the intention and the like
Mhm.
what I need to fill my cup. First of all, as a human, I'm deserving of that.
Yes.
And I really believe that. That's something that I don't think we necessarily look at enough of like we are the child. We were
Yes.
once a child and like we don't want our kids just to grow up and then no one cares about them, right? But me showing up for myself allows me to have a relationship with my kids. And at different times in my life with different struggles, different mental health things, different life situations, the way that I've had to show up for myself has been different, but it doesn't mean that I've abandoned my kids in any way. Sometimes it's honestly
Yes.
like, we're going to do what I want to do this weekend. And it's something that's fun for you. And maybe like my friend who has a kid will come along and they'll be there and you'll have tons of fun. But like, it was actually a choice I made for me.
For you.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's not
Yes.
abandoning them. That's not like I should have gone to the park with them because that would have been for them. It's like, that's not, we're comparing two things that like actually aren't competing with each other.
Mm. I love what you said of like we're comparing two things that aren't competing with each other. And I think you just like unlocked something with me because I've been spending a lot of time thinking about like what does come first.
Yeah.
Right? And I think you're right. It's not mom coming first or kids coming first. It's like what's the metaphor that's coming to me? It's a river. It's like the water flows in both directions. When I'm air quotes good, whatever my baseline of good is, that feeds into them, which means that I mean all the research shows like when the parents are good, the kids are
Yeah.
generally good, right? And so then that flows into me because I'm not having to deal with like intense behaviors or like they feel connected with me, so there's a reciprocal relationship there. And so when I'm good and I can feed into them and I can be goofy and I can be silly and I can treat misbehaviors like seriously but not critically,
Yeah.
then they feel like loved and heard and seen. It's like this reciprocal nature that's kind of coming to me around the like, if you take care of yourself, then you actually are able to prioritize your kids and you are able to think clearly and you are able to like have clarity around like your values or how you want to show up. Or like, if a mom on the school ground, for example, like a pickup for your son, if they make a comment like, I have a meeting with the teacher because I want to know this and I want to know this and this is wrong and this was said blah blah blah, which is totally okay if that's
Yeah.
how you want to show up in the world. And you're standing there thinking, "Fuck, should I be doing that?"
Yeah.
You are like firmly planted and grounded and settled in your values and how you choose to show up because you're like, "You go for it. That's not
Totally.
my way of doing it, but you go for it." And there's no comparison or there's no like
Totally.
criticism towards self
Yeah.
around that.
Well, and like with that situation, I think like I just think about my background as a teacher and seeing parents show up in different ways. I had a lot more information going into the role of parent than someone who's a new parent going into that role would have, right? Like I had seen a few classes worth of students come through and how their parents engaged and interacted. And there was absolutely no right or wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
But it gave me information to like inform my decision of how much of myself I was going to pour into that. And obviously, again, like I said, like with different seasons of my kid in school, it's looked different. I don't like hold myself to something that like, oh, I'm not going to have a random meeting with the teacher. Like, no, we
Yeah.
have like, but yes, it's like I could firmly plant myself in that. And I think if you don't have the information, if you don't know that that's even an option, that can be really hard to do because you're hearing the things that you feel like automatically you have to compare yourself to this one example. And it may not be the right choice for you and your family, or right isn't even the
Yeah.
right word, but it may not be the choice that like you want to make in that moment. But you
Yeah.
think you have to because you're not hearing about the mom who is not doing that stuff. I'm not even like
Yeah.
choosing not to do that stuff, but just not doing it. There's no conversation
Yeah.
around that.
Yes, yes, because I've worked in a lot of different areas with moms, as a social worker. I know that there are moms out in the world who actually don't even have capacity to be that involved with the school, not because they
Yeah,
don't want to, but because they're like working a minimum wage job and they're a shift worker and their 10-year-old is home after school every day because they have to work, right? And so is a good mom at home waiting to greet her kids after school, or is she a bad mom because she works, is not even an option. So sometimes I feel guilt and worry is a bit of a privilege because
yeah,
like, I have financial security at this moment in time. If I didn't have financial security, I wouldn't be worried if I was attending the PTA meetings because I literally couldn't. I would probably be working,
yeah,
right? And so there's also that, like, that contextual perspective around you have capacity, you have access to tech, you have internet at home, you have all of these things in order to one, receive the communication and reply to the communication. And you have the privilege to attend a meeting at 10 a.m. on a Monday. And a social construct in how a good mom shows up or what she is or isn't guilty for feels about, right?
totally. Well, and as you're saying all of that, when we look at the standards of like what we're holding ourselves to, and I've never really like thought of it even that clearly in that way. It so is something that is a privilege to even consider, should I be doing this or should I not? Or feeling guilt about not doing it when you have the capacity to. But it's like if you look at that and you lay that out and you look at the fact that, like, okay, what I'm deciding it means to be a good mom, like, eliminates a lot of people. Like, they can't meet those standards.
Mhm.
Do I actually believe that? Right? Because
Yeah.
you say all that and it's like, that's not what we're gonna base that's not what I'm gonna base this on.
Yeah.
To me, if I think about it that way, like, no way, that's not there are so many incredible, great mothers who are doing their best to keep the family afloat, working multiple jobs and, like, struggling to get by
Yeah.
and showing up for their kids in every way that they possibly can.
Yeah.
And when you really think about those things, it's like we do, but we can't hold ourselves to a standard of like perfection again when
Yes.
like that defines what it means to be a good mom. If like that's actually not how we define being a good mom, like that's not fair to
Yeah.
ourselves.
No. And Emily, you have had lots of conversations with people over on your podcast, and I've had lots of conversations with people here and in my counseling practice. If you could summarize what people do as like a first step in order to reflect on this, what
Hmm.
would you recommend in the like unsolicited advice territory? If someone's now
Absolutely.
here
Yeah.
and they're like, what the fuck do I do with it then? What would you say to that person if they were sitting right in front of you?
Yeah. Okay, so I like to take kind of two approaches to answering questions like this because I think number one, the most important thing we can do is like educate ourselves on what's happening. It's understanding that we are functioning within systems of patriarchy that are holding us to this perfect mother myth, and we are holding ourselves to that same myth because it's what we've been conditioned into. Seeing it for what it is crucial. And that's like listening to podcasts, reading. There are so many like great resources out there to really understand like mothering in our world and just being a woman in our world, being a, femme person in our world. Like that's just there's a lot of standards we're held to that are absolutely ridiculous. We can acknowledge that, right? And then having conversations about it. Sometimes just bringing something up like this happened, I felt bad about it, whether that's to a friend you trust who has kids, you want to make sure you're talking to someone who is a safe space, but are working with a therapist. I mean, like, I have therapy right after this call and I bring all of it to her. And there's times
Yes.
she looks at me and is like, what are you talking about? Right. And then I'm like, oh, what am I talking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a reason you all are employed, right? We need people to talk to about these things, and getting into like what's actually happening matters because we have to kind of be able to call ourselves out for how ridiculous some of it is. Like how ridiculous
Yes.
the standards are doesn't diminish the fact that like they're there and we're doing the things, we're holding ourselves to those standards, but like I mean, just pointing that out is something. It's an important something. On a more like what do you actually do in the moment when you're feeling the guilt? Because that's also important. Like I said, like knowing what the standards are doesn't necessarily keep us from having those ingrained in us
Yes.
and feeling the guilt in the moment. I like to think about thought reframing. And this is something that when you first start doing it, you have to be really intentional about because we're going through our day as an autopilot. If you start feeling guilt about something and you don't stop yourself and think what's going on behind this, you're just going to internalize it and move on to the next thing with that always there. But when we have a feeling of guilt or shame or toxic guilt, when that comes up, we can identify the thought behind it. So I think of this example. There was a mom I worked with a while back who was sharing an experience she had where she was doing the dishes and had both headphones in and was listening to music. Her son knew that like when she was doing that, that was like her time. And he came up to say something, to share something about something he was doing. And she like, I don't even think really snapped at him, but more kind of like rejected the connection right there, right? And he was fine and walked away and went back to doing what he was doing. And she felt so guilty for it, right? It was like, I am a bad mom because I didn't, whatever the thought was, there was a thought behind it. And if you can identify what that thought is, I'm a bad mom because I am not connecting with my son every time he wants to connect, maybe, right? Like that might be the thought. You can actually look at that thought and compare that to what you actually believe, your actual values, right? You can compare it to like, is that the belief I have about what it means to be a good mom? That a good mom is present for her kid 24/7 for whatever they need. And you can dig into that. My guess is probably realistically that's not what you're thinking is a good mom, right? Like if you
Yeah.
think about why that is the goal, it's like that's ridiculous. Like, I wouldn't expect that of my best friend. Like,
Yes.
and when you can understand kind of what's behind the thought and what you actually believe to some extent, right? Then you can change that thought. You can change it to, I am doing something for me right now, or I will be able to connect with my son at a different time when I'm more available for him,
Mhm.
right? Like when I can actually connect with him. So when I'm done with this, I can go over and sit down and engage in this conversation that he wanted to have. I think what's interesting about that story too is like the son, he was unbothered by it. This is a mom
Yes.
who shows up for her kids. There's not a major lack of connection where the kid's always trying to connect and the mom's always shutting the child down. It's like, no, he was like, my bad. I know I'm not supposed to, like you're doing something and you're
Yes.
busy. I don't need to interject. So he went back to doing his thing. But being able to reframe that thought and choose a different thought, choose a different path forward, maybe a path forward to maybe like she wants to quote, fix it, right? That's also when we snap at our kids or we do something that we
Mhm.
don't like, that can also be part of it is I'm going to fix this, but you have to stop it before it becomes that toxic guilt. You have to like change the thought. And it's huge. It really does work. And if you practice it, it can become something that you do much more naturally,
Yes.
especially with the awareness of why a lot of those thoughts are happening in the first place. Like when you understand the external,
Yes.
you can get to a place where it's, wow, I actually think that's kind of stupid that I thought that,
Yeah. Like why would I hold myself to that standard?
Yeah, like that's
Or
ridiculous.
who said I can't stand here and listen to music? I think you made a really great distinction in that around this isn't in this particular case, this isn't a mom who is in the habit
Yeah.
of this kind of interaction, right? I'm looking at the positives of this where it's a one-off and she's holding a boundary.
It's a boundary piece.
She's
Yes.
she's holding this like, "I'm doing the dishes, I'm enjoying my music. What you have to show me or say to me or whatever, share with me is really important. And right now I need to finish the dishes before I can like
Yeah.
focus on you." And I don't know this person. I don't know if that's what they were thinking. For example, when I'm on the phone, and it happened the other day. I was on the phone with my mom. She was telling me something really important. We have a family funeral to go to, and it was like we were discussing the details. And both of my kids ran up to me at the same time and they were like, "Mom, look at this."
Yeah.
Blah. And I just paused them. But I looked them in the eye and I was like, "What you have to say is really important to me, but I cannot do these two things at the same time.
Yeah.
And I need to finish this conversation before I can focus on you so that I can focus on you." Right? It doesn't
Yeah.
feel good for you for me to be like, "Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Okay, all right, great job." Right? Because I really want to be here on the
Yeah.
phone.
You need to
Right?
be.
And
In
I
that
need to
moment, you
be.
need to be.
And, like, I think the other thing around the reframing piece, not only is it the positive self-talk for yourself,
Hmm.
but also because anxiety is, like, rampant and the rates of anxiety are like, incredibly high, like, the highest they've ever been in the history of the world. And I also trust that you can handle waiting until I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
you can handle this. You can handle till I'm done doing the dishes,
Yeah.
or you can handle until I'm done being on the phone. Like, you have the skills, or you're going to develop the skills to do that. But if I'm constantly like doing the dishes and talking to you at the same time, or talking on the phone, or, whatever, it's like, then I'm teaching you that, like, you can just interject at any time.
Yeah, which actually isn't a skill that you or a habit that you want your kid to move forward
Yeah.
with into the world because we all know that that's not really respectful of other people. We want our kids to grow up and be humans that understand
Yeah.
boundaries, that respect people, that respect that like their mom is a human, right? All those things are important and really a lot of things that we sometimes feel guilty about. I mean, even I think about like showing up imperfectly for our kids or like expressing like an apology, completing that repair. It's like those are all things that benefit them so much moving forward. If you
Mhm.
just have a mom who never messes up, who is endlessly there for you and all these things, that also is going to be something that's complicated as an adult when you're like, I can't live up to that, or I don't know how to act around people. Like, I don't know how to have a partner, like all these things, right? Like, there's so many implications of that. And I don't think anyone has a mom who's perfect. So we might as well just accept that, like, we're teaching them something by showing up in our imperfect ways.
Yes. Yes. We could talk about this forever. People have written books and done studies that capture these elements. And so, thank you so much, Emily, for having this conversation with me, sharing pieces of your vulnerable story and your experience and livedness of constantly creating or responding to the tension of, like, how do I want to show up? How am I showing up? Is that real for me, or is that some construct? Is it some narrative, some story that I've like created? I think it's so important to understand where our thoughts are coming from and how they play out in our real lives. So I just thank you for your time and having this conversation with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, I could talk about this all day. I love talking about this, and especially with somebody like you, who I'm like, I just so respect the work that you're doing and the change you're making. So thanks for just being a force out there, making a difference for moms, families, the entire world. It's important work.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate that.